The federal judge issued a temporary restraining order on the Trump administration's ban on Harvard's ability to enroll international students. Now, that ban would impact nearly a quarter of the student body at Harvard. The administration says it's because of Harvard's handling of anti-Semitism on campus and that enrolling international students is a privilege, not a right. Harvard calls it, quote, clear retaliation for refusing to bow to the White House demands. I want to turn to CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig, who is going to explain in English what exactly this means. First of all, what we just heard from the judge, and broadly, what the actual case you think both the administration and Harvard have here.
Yeah, so Dana, this ruling just came out minutes ago. It is a big win for Harvard, temporary, but very significant. What this says is the court is blocking the Trump administration from blocking Harvard from bringing in international students. In other words, as of this moment, it's back to the status quo. Harvard may continue to bring in international students. Now, the way this case came about is the Trump administration sent a letter about a month ago in April to Harvard saying essentially, we want the following information on every one of your 7,000 international students. We want disciplinary records. We want records of any obstructive behavior by any of them, any dangerous behavior by any of them. Harvard tried to comply to the extent they could. Some of those terms are very general, but Harvard sent back documents to the Trump administration. The Trump administration said, nope, we're not satisfied, and therefore you can no longer accept these students. Now, the court today said, I'm putting that on hold. The judge said, I'm putting that on hold because to block these international students would cause irreparable harm, both to the students, some of whom are currently enrolled at Harvard. Suddenly their status was in question. Can they go back? Can they attend the summer semester? And to Harvard itself, which, as you said, about a quarter of its entire student body are these international students. So for the moment, Harvard is free to continue admitting these students, but the larger issue still has to play out in the courts.
And Ellie, what legal basis does the Trump administration have for its actions here?
So it's not exactly clear to me. It seems like the Trump administration's legal position here is we're the executive branch. We control these student visa programs, F1 and J1 student visa programs. And if we want to revoke them, we can revoke them. And by the way, we're doing this all to prevent anti-Semitism on campus. However, Harvard's response to that in their brief that they put in yesterday is, first of all, it violates our First Amendment rights. It's not up to the government, the federal government, to micromanage speech and ideology on campus. And then Harvard's second argument is, even if the administration had the right to do this, they have to comply with something called the Administrative Procedures Act, basically saying they have to go through a process. We're entitled to a hearing, we're entitled to an appeal, and none of that has been done yet. And I think that's part of the reason we saw today's ruling as well. It seems to me on the face of it, Harvard has a much stronger legal argument.
Ellie, thank you so much for helping break that down for us. Appreciate it. Good to see you. And here at the table, I'm joined by an amazing group of reporters today. CNN's Jamie Gengel, Zolan Kano-Youngs of the New York Times, CNN's Elena Treen, and Tia Mitchell of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Happy Friday, everybody. Friday of a holiday weekend. Jamie, put this in perspective.
So, as Ellie said, this is a big win for Harvard, but there is still uncertainty about how this is going to play out. Imagine if you're a student and you're wondering, will I really be able to go to class in the fall? It's also not just international students at Harvard who are panicked about this. Every university is watching this. Every business is watching this, wondering, are we next? And just big picture, this is, we were discussing this earlier, this is a real problem for our country right now because we are seeing this throughout. We're seeing it at law firms. We're seeing it at universities. We're seeing, Tim Cook at Apple was told you're going to get a 25% tariff. Both Democrats and Republicans have said to me, this is what authoritarian capture looks like.
And so what the administration is sort of going in with and what they started to go in with at other schools, but Harvard in particular, has been you didn't handle the very raw, very real anti-Semitism that made Jewish students feel uncomfortable and unsafe for a long time, particularly after October 7th. Well, and so we are going to punish you. What the administration did with their threats is went far beyond anti-Semitism. And they made demands from Harvard that were based on political ideology, having really nothing to do with anti-Semitism. And that's one of the things that Larry Summers, who has had a lot of jobs, Treasury Secretary, but he was also the president of Harvard for a while. Here's what he said this morning on CNN.
This is extortion. It's a vendetta using all powers of the government because of a political argument with Harvard. I've often been critical of Harvard on aspects relating to identity politics, anti-Semitism, and much more. But that's not what this is about. This is about a vicious attack to pursue a personal agenda.
Zolan?
Well, you're right. I mean, there's the conversation about how universities handled protests on campus over the past year, right? But what we've seen is now I believe there's 8 different investigations from the federal government into Harvard right now. We've seen the administration not just talk about their handling of anti-Semitism, but also talk about who universities are hiring, different levels of including diversity into the students that you're admitting and the people that you're hiring. There are those in the administration even before these campus protests. I remember this from Trump round 1. That felt that the Ivy Leagues in particular almost set the tone for a more sort of liberal society that we would see, and have tried to change the culture of those universities to have a university system that really does reflect MAGA in a way and reflects the ideology of the federal government. And you're seeing now the sort of a hodgepodge of responses to these universities under that vein. Here also, you mentioned all the people, you know, companies and what have you that are responding just to this response when it comes to international students. I would add one more, and that's other nations as well. One of the ways that the United States has strong relationships, even with adversaries like China, is through the relationship it has in collaboration with international students. You cut that off, it also is going to have a diplomatic ripple effect as well.
You know, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was just reading an op-ed that Jason Furman, who also is an economics, is an economist and an expert, and who worked for Democrats, but also went to Harvard and is now a Harvard professor. He wrote about exactly that, about the fact that there has been untold benefit. It's almost impossible to calculate how much the benefit that the U.S. has had historically in bringing over international students, and then, of course, sending international students abroad. That's when it comes to maybe soft power or diplomacy. And then there's just the raw dollars and cents. He wrote here that the U.S. receives as much as $50 billion annually from foreign students.
No, I mean, it's also something that we've learned, and you've seen this in some of the reporting today, that some of the money from these foreign students, from these international students, helps pay for the financial aid for domestic students.
Yeah.
So there's definitely an economic question here. I think your point, Zolan, about why the Trump administration is doing this and looking more broadly at not just what they're doing with this lawsuit, but also other things that they've done. It's very clear that this is a cultural issue for the Trump administration and for the White House. And you have a lot of people in the White House who believe that Harvard and these other Ivy League institutions are not preaching or they're preaching and they're practicing things that they shouldn't be. It's similar to what we've seen with them try to do in public schools about trying to change what the curriculums are. They believe that they are too woke and that they need to take actions against them. And we saw them do this. This was related to some of the diversity practices that Zolan was talking about, try to, you know, propose revoking their tax-exempt status. I mean, that is a sign of retribution, and people inside the White House acknowledge that.
Well, yeah, so there's retribution, which we're going to talk about in 1 second. And then there's the idea that they feel that they have a mandate because the president campaigned on a lot of these issues. Maybe not, you know, kicking out foreign students at Harvard, but what he calls the woke agenda. I mean, that was a big part of what we heard over and over and over from him. And he won the election. So in his mind and in the mind of the people who work for him, they think that this is the way to go. Again, just back on the economics of this, according to Axios, U.S. startups valued at $1 billion or more 44% are founded or co-founded by immigrants. I don't have the data, but I believe that here you go, around 24 founded or co-founded by international students, specifically from Harvard. And I would imagine a lot of those 44% that co-founded these startups beyond Harvard were educated in the United States.
I mean, President Trump doesn't have to look far. His main advisor, Elon Musk, is a very successful American businessman who's an immigrant, right? And so I think, yes, this is about punishing students in universities, but I really think this is also part of Trump trying to reshape the American government system, reshape what we currently consider America's democracy. And we know that one way authoritarian leaders do so is by attacking free thought, free speech, and attacking facts. And we've seen him do that in how he is going after, the academy, our higher education system, among other institutions in America.